And welcome. This is Dr. Greg Cason. You are on Off the Couch with Dr. Greg, where psychology meets everyday life. I'm a psychologist. I'm going to be talking to you about some of the latest research studies. And with me is producer Brian. Hey, Brian.
Happy Monday.
And we have Gus on the board. Hi, Gus.
Hey.
Hey. Well, today on Off the Couch, this week in psychology, we're going to be talking about if your partner keeps you up at night, which I think a lot of couples go through. If your partner keeps you up at night, it may be your dreams that are the problem. And we're going to talk about anger and that you may be handling your anger all wrong and even making it worse. And then we're going to talk about psychology in the news. Who's happier, Democrats or Republicans? Yes, the studies are in. And if you like us, please subscribe, like us, give us a thumbs up, 5 stars, whatever it is. We do appreciate that, you guys. It apparently helps quite a bit. That's the payment we ask. So thank you. And go to the YouTube page if you want to see copies of the studies. That's www.youtube.com. Why did I say www? Doesn't everyone know that? Go to youtube.com/Dr. Greg. That's DRGREG. That is enough of that stuff. So first, what if you heard this? So tell me, both Gus and Brian, what if you heard this and you see these two attractive women? I drink borax. That's what the attractive and smiling TikToker says, and she's holding up a box of laundry additive. So, Gus, can you put up the picture just for the people who happen to be on the YouTube thing? So if she's holding up her borax, saying she drinks borax, and she says it balances testosterone and estrogen. It's a powerhouse anti-inflammatory. It's amazing for arthritis and osteoporosis, and obviously great for your gut health. Would you believe it? Would you believe it, Brian?
Well, from the image I'm looking at, it looks like it's TikTok, so I don't think so.
Oh, anything on TikTok? What if it were on Instagram? Would you believe it?
No, I mean, I'm still I would be so curious at what is she, where is the proof behind this?
What about you, Gus?
Yeah, I would not listen to some lady on social media.
Oh, you wouldn't listen to a lady on social media. Good for you too. But this is one of the biggest trends that's been happening on TikTok. People or influencers are saying how they drink borax, so much so that the FDA had to issue a warning about this because it does cause digestive problems and it causes other things. I mean, this is a chemical used as a laundry additive. It is not a food substitute or a food additive in any way. So it's really kind of concerning that this was happening. But this led me down a little bit of a thing about to an article I found of how to spot a wellness influencer fraud. Now, it seems like wellness is sort of the big hot thing we hear about all the time, and wellness is just one of the biggest trending word searches on Google. And we hear about all these wellness, quote, influencers, usually people that are self-styled experts on a particular area. And they basically say what is and isn't good. Maybe they know yoga or maybe they know personal training, but they've kind of expanded it to just about everything. So we need to distinguish between evidence-based information and pseudoscience. Do you guys know what pseudoscience is?
No, explain it to us, please.
Pseudoscience is sort of like fake science, but it sounds like real science. So when these TikTok influencers go on and they say, this does this does that, it's basically a miracle. I mean, I was surprised. They say that borax does so many amazing things. I was surprised it didn't cure baldness, because that was basically the level of excitement people have about it. And basically, I mean, yes, you and I know they're doing it for clicks, but there are people who really pay attention. And wellness influencers tap into a truth about how we process information. It's basically this kind of parasocial connection that these wellness influencers have with other people. They think it's more trustworthy, or they think the audience member will look at these influencers and think it's more trustworthy when it comes from a person we feel like we know. because this is part of a community or a friend group. Now, even though we don't officially know this influencer, if we follow this influencer over and over, we may think that this influencer has our best interest in mind. So it kind of pulls us all in. But I found this article by Michelle Cohen, MD. She's a physician, and she gave 3 tips about how to spot a wellness influencer fraud. And I thought, that's kind of what I'm trying to do, isn't it? I mean, I am kind of pushing something, which is wellness, but psychological wellness. So I decided we could put me to the test. Will you guys let me know? Number 1, am I selling something? Number 1, are they selling something? Am I selling something?
No, you're giving out information. You're giving out free education.
Yeah, that's true. So look out for someone who's selling a supplement, a diet book, a master class that will have all the answers. We're going to give you a tip, but then you have to watch the master class to get all the answers, or to join a community. True experts tend to discuss evidence versus promoting their own unproven products. So true experts will kind of focus more on evidence. And that's been the whole theme of this show. But I'm so excited by all the research that's out there that isn't getting out to the public, that I wanted to create a vehicle to get stuff out to the public. There are so many psychologists who just want to talk off the top of their head. And I do have a lot of opinions, obviously, and a lot of knowledge, but I'm more excited about new knowledge that's coming out every day. Excuse me.
That's how excited you are.
So excited that I coughed. A true expert may sell services, but the services can be vetted. That means you can kind of check them out, because usually a true expert, usually in places like medicine or psychology, or if they're an attorney or a real estate expert, they need to be licensed. Or a beauty expert, they get a licensed cosmetologist. You can actually look them up and see if they are licensed, so that they have at least some kind of clear vetting, that they've had education and they've had training, and that someone says they're okay to go. Okay, so I meet the first one. I'm okay. Number 2, what are the boundaries of their expertise? Let me explain, guys. So wellness influencers tend to promote themselves as knowledgeable in all areas. Experts tend to focus on one area, and they have the credentials to back it up. What do you think?
You definitely have the experience, credentials, and everything in the books.
This is sounding, I didn't mean to be self-aggrandizing, but yeah.
Did you set this up?
No, but it's actually kind of easy. But state licensure is an even better indication, as I said. And by the way, I had a professor once who told me that state licensure is the minimum. When you get licensed, that means you're at the very bottom, ready to enter your field. So it doesn't mean you've achieved it, you're the expert now. It means you're at the bottom, you're entering your minimum to practice. So you are considered an expert, like in law or as a physician, etc., but you still have much to learn. And number 3, this is one you guys give me more feedback on. How do they talk about science? Do they talk about it as an absolute truth, or do they talk about it more reflecting current evidence? What do you think?
About you or the influencers?
No, I'm asking about me.
Oh, no, you're always coming up with new studies and new evidence, and it's all backed up studies,
Well, all right. Yeah. Because current evidence is really a process of discovery. We're always discovering new things. And that's probably, oddly, what I was so excited about, as opposed to a static truth. Absolute truth is black and white. And we're going to be talking about black and white thinking on this show. We think of absolute truth kind of like a faith-based concept, that when you think about religion, that's people believe that there is just one way to believe, and they don't have flexibility in those types of beliefs. Where science-based information acknowledges uncertainty, blind spots, limitations, and even when more research is needed. And like, this is just hot tip about research. There's always more research needed. When you're reading a study, that's almost the tagline for every single study. More research is needed. But it's kind of funny. A friend of mine and I had a kind of misunderstanding with a friend of ours who, I guess she had this kind of rigid belief system about science, that science is an absolute truth, and that when they say something, that's what should be. And she was very frustrated because Dr. Anthony Fauci during COVID at the beginning had said one thing, and then they changed midstream based on the data and based on other factors. And this person was advocating that they thought that this person thought it was irresponsible, and didn't understand why the opinion had changed. And we were both like, well, data change over time. When we gather more data, we can see that there's more information. And when you have more discovery, then you have more information. And then that sometimes changes the course of things. So when we go back and we say, like, I hear the COVID people, this person didn't do that. When we hear the COVID deniers doing hindsight bias is something, it's the same as Monday morning quarterbacking, sort of looking backwards and saying, well, we shouldn't have closed the schools this long. We shouldn't have done this. We shouldn't have done that, or we should have done X and Y. I think it's all very fine and dandy, but we can't really say that because in the middle of it, we were all dealing with it the very best we could. So it's a little odd to look backwards and say what we should have done. We could perhaps have done some different things, but it was probably a little bit rude to put down the scientists who were doing their very best at that time. And finally, we need to develop media literacy skills that can help individuals make informed decisions about engaging with online health content. It is my biggest frustration because I don't think, people who do like a quick assertion that something works, and it kind of cracks me up about those, like, I drink borax and all those studies, because there's always someone who says, I've never had so much energy, and they're always super excited about it, and suddenly it's cured everything. But in reality, has it? We can all have a placebo effect, and then usually when you check back with that person a month later, they're on to another trend. So
I also think a lot of people don't understand how the influencer world works, and most of these people are getting paid to say that this stuff works and that this is like their favorite brand or their favorite product. It's not just in the wellness, it's like the beauty, it's like every type of industry that's out there. It's like if they're promoting something, they're getting paid for it, unless it's their own brand, and even then it's their own thing, so they just want you to buy or get into it. So,
I was reading a marketing study once, and it was like there was a certain number of people that they want. People that are too big in the influencer world, they're worried that they can't really recommend a product adequately. But when you have a certain number, they think that person's more connected with their community.
It's like a micro
influencer, yes.
So that's like a whole nother thing. And then there's like another way of like reverse influencing, that people are going in and like talking about how bad certain products are and like actually spilling the truth about it. So yeah, it's a whole different world.
Well, let's talk about what we're going to talk about this week in psychology. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this one because I thought it was one of the more fascinating studies I've come across, and we'll talk about why. But does your partner keep you up at night? And if so, it may be your unattainable dreams. Let's talk about people's annoying behavior when you sleep. What are they?
Snoring.
Snoring. What else?
Moving too much.
Oh, moving too much. Tossing and turning. What else?
Yeah. I sometimes talk in my sleep.
Ooh, talking in your sleep. Ooh, that's good. Gus agrees. Do you do that too, Gus?
Yeah, I've been told I murmur, like I go, shh, shh, shh.
Oh, it's good to know.
Love that.
Also, we, frequent bathroom trips, people that...
I get up to pee all the time.
Oh, well, good for you.
Yeah.
It's good to cleanse.
It sounds like I'm just an annoying person.
Also, one I hear a lot in therapy is the sound of a CPAP machine of a partner, because those are the machines that go on when people have sleep apnea to help them breathe. And they're these breathing devices that go over their nose and mouth, and that they can make a great deal of noise sometimes with the partner.
It looks scary too.
Well, it helps them. It helps them breathe. I think it's actually a pretty amazing device because it really changes people's lives. That one does change people's lives.
I bet.
Not drinking borax. But if you have sleep apnea, it's a good thing. So, poor sleep can lead you to feel anger towards your partner and, of course, decreased satisfaction with the relationship. So what's one to do? Well, this was interesting from Wilfrid Laurier University in Canada, did a study that was published in Frontiers in Psychology, and they wanted to look at problems in sleep with relationships because they had a theory it may be related to your dreams. And when I talk about dreams, I'm actually not talking about the ones you have while you're asleep. It's the ones you have while you're awake. The dreams of what you're going to achieve in life. Can you believe this? That the study indicates the problem with people who are annoyed by their partners may be related to their general capacity to let go of unattainable goals. So rigidly holding on to unachievable goals may be the culprit. That's the thing. And people go, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why would holding on to your goals? So let me explain this. It's based on something called goal achievement theory. And you can put up those boxes if you want, Gus. Goal achievement theory is people differ in their capacity to deal with goals in life that are either temporarily or permanently unattainable. So these are things like, these could be big things like being an astronaut or ballet dancer or Olympic athlete. These are these really big, far-stretched goals. But the key is not that you have these big goals. It's the key is that you're able to disengage from the goals. So you basically, if you have your belief that your ability to attain the goal is fixed, that means you have all the skills you need, that'll lead you to kind of a performance goal orientation, that you actually want to have that goal, that you already have the skill, you can just go out there and do it. And if you believe you can do it and you actually achieve it, that would be a great thing. But if you don't believe in your own skills, but you do believe that you can actually achieve the goal, which I know sounds a little bit strange, it can lead you to feel helpless and a failure. So you actually have a bad reaction to it. So goal disengagement is the readiness to abandon such goals through goal re-engagement, and look for easier goals to replace it. So let's just talk about this. So astronaut, ballet dancer, or Olympic athlete, you could change astronaut to working for NASA or SpaceX as an engineer or employee, or maybe you're, something else within the space program. For being a ballet dancer, maybe you can't be a national ballet dancer. Maybe it's a regional ballet dancer. Maybe you'll become a ballet teacher or a ballet critic. So it doesn't mean that you can't work in the area of ballet, but you may not achieve exactly what you want. And for Olympic athlete, it's like being a league athlete or being a tournament participant. When people can turn down their goals from these rigid heights, they can readjust them once they realize that their goal becomes unattainable. Because I was talking with Brian on the way about being a ballet dancer, and that, after the age of 30, that becomes a fairly difficult, if not impossible, goal to start that journey.
It was very disappointing towards me.
Yeah, but that's not one you can usually start late in life. You have to start it pretty early. But so if you have that goal in mind, but you weren't doing something to actually achieve it, then it would be better to adjust your goal. So if people who are able to be flexible and adjust their goals, don't blame their partners when their partner kicks and moves. I thought that was kind of cool. And people who are rigid get kind of angry at their partner. And that may be because they're just existing in a world where things are absolute.
That makes sense. And they're frustrated already alone within themselves. So I'm sure any little thing will frustrate them even more, like the sleep situations. I could see if I was listening to myself snore or something. Yeah, I would get annoyed.
That'd be amazing if you could listen to yourself snore.
I would stop.
So if you're unemployed, rather than holding out for your long shot dream job, replace your goal with learning new skills to improve your attractiveness to employers. So it's just about adjusting things to make them more realistic. Why I thought this was so interesting is this is very much parallels the type of therapy I do and teach. And it's not teaching it's teaching people to move out of the world of demands or rigidity and move into the world of flexibility and to move toward their wishes, wants, and desires in a much more positive and attainable way. So we're removing rigidity and we're rigidity and introducing flexibility. You know, Albert Ellis said that all mental illness is based in rigid thinking and all mental wellness is based in flexible thinking. Albert Ellis is he's the grandfather of cognitive behavioral therapy.
So you would say, is it more like a move like water kind of situation?
If you can move like water, or it's, one way to look at it is like a twig on a tree. If the twig is dry and it's brittle, it'll easily break. But if the twig is full of life and green, it will bend. So if you put pressure on it, it will bend and bounce back. But the twig, which is dry and brittle, will easily break.
Ooh, I don't want to be dry and brittle.
The twig is rigidity, and the branch, which is full of life, is flexibility. So people are better at this. People who are better at being flexible tend to report better efficacy and better well-being. So what's all this have to do with sleep? Well, Wilfrid Laurier University researchers followed 113 cohabitating couples from Montreal for 1 year. They measured relationship satisfaction, sleep efficacy, relationship-specific coping strategies, and this goal adjustment theory we just talked about. And questionnaires were given at the beginning and the end of the study, so the beginning of 1 year and at the end of 1 year. And what they found was they statistically controlled for differences in age, education, family income, etc. They didn't see any differences in gender. But what they found were a greater ability to cope with problems was associated with better relationship satisfaction. I know it sounds very simple, but this is actually quite profound. That when you have someone who is kind of a kicker, gets up to pee like you do, Brian, and snore and have all those problems, that you want to be with someone who is cool with themselves.
Got it. Taking notes.
So couples where one partner reported feeling significant self-blame tended to experience less satisfaction with the relationship. So if you have a lot of self-blame, you think you're a failure, you think the world's out to get you, you deserve to be an astronaut, whatever, you're going to often take it out on your partner. So negative impact of poor partner sleep on relationship satisfaction is stronger for people with a low capacity for goal disengagement. Wow. I can't believe I wrote out that sentence because that's a tough one to kind of swallow. But the bottom line is if you don't flex with your goals, you're going to hold it against your partner and you're going to be kind of upset. Now, does this finding sound a little familiar to you, Brian? Or no? Well, it's okay. On February 5th, our February 5th show, it's called The Selfish Secret Ingredient to Happier Relationships.
I do remember now.
So that selfish secret ingredient, do you remember what it was?
It's like your partner or being happy with yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's self-compassion. So being able to have compassion for yourself when you make a mistake, when you do wrong, when you have problems. That is the same line of thinking. It's flexible thinking toward yourself. So here we're looking at self-compassion for better relationship satisfaction. And in the sleep study, it's looking for as opposed to self-compassion, it's being more flexible with your goals and letting go of rigid goals, goal disengagement, which is basically flexing as well. So basically the same skills. You're being able to be flexible with yourself so that you can be happier with your partner.
And as easy as that sounds, that's really hard sometimes to be flexible.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I know I have an issue sometimes with it, so that's why I can say that.
The authors say that it's resource allocation. That's what they put this to, and I think that's kind of simple. Resource allocation is like an unattainable goal causes you to put less time and effort into the relationship. So they're saying when someone's very rigid in their goal searching, they're not focusing on their partner as much. But I wouldn't personally discount the role of mental rigidity, because that's essentially what we've been talking about this whole time, or that black and white thinking. Also obsessive thinking and blame. These are people who external locus of control. They believe that others are to blame for their failure. So for making someone a lighter sleeper and blaming their partner when they get disturbed. So look at how you're thinking. That can play a big role. Okay.
That's a cool study.
I thought it was
for sharing.
Now, let's talk about the next one. When you do get pissed at your partner, how you're handling your anger. This is another dissertation research. This was exciting to me because I love it when these dissertations turn into these major studies. Now, certainly it was done with faculty at Ohio State University, but this person was a doctoral student, did their dissertation, and it was published in Clinical Psychology Review. And this person is a woman, and she looked at how people handle anger. And so we already know some of the findings of this study. So what she did was kind of nice. She did something called a meta-analysis. So she looked at 154 studies. So she looked across all these studies that were already done, and then they're kind of statistically controlled to be able to compare the results. So she looked at 154 studies involving more than 10,000 participants, different ages, races, genders, cultures, to find out what really works to reduce anger. What do you think?
Like what things we can do to reduce anger. Well, it's because I've worked with you for a while, so I kind of know some of these things already. With like the temperature is one of the big ones. Yeah, and you can, because you feel your body heat up when you're angry most of the time, I would say. So that change in the temperature of your body is a big help.
What about venting anger? Blowing off steam.
Oh, the gym. Oh, God. I mean, yeah. Working out, moving your body, walking because you can walk and like think about it at the same time.
Well, we will talk about this. So this author really kind of honed in on this venting anger catharsis, like being able to blow off the steam and let it boil out, sort of thing. And she also looked at turning down the temperature, which we talked about in the past, and letting the water cool. So she looked at reducing physiological arousal. And we're going to talk about this because reducing physiological arousal is one key way to reduce anger. Basically, like you said, Brian, turning down the temperature, turning down the heat. So activities like rage rooms and pillow hitting, this is something that used to be popular in the 70s and 80s and probably 90s, where therapists would go, here, hit these pillows and scream and scream. That not only did nothing, but sometimes it makes it worse. How about that?
I did not know that.
That's
a new lesson. And the rage rooms are still around, by the way.
Yeah, I have no problem with the rage room, but I wouldn't go there because you think it's a solution to your anger. I would go there just because you like to break things. am I wrong? That would be fun.
No, for sure. I would always want to break
When do we have permission to go and break plates?
No, never.
So, yeah, but that can make anger worse. But one of the things may surprise you is jogging actually makes anger worse. So going for a jog actually can be one of the worst things you can do. And we're going to talk about this. All of this is related. So to decrease anger, turn down your arousal levels. You want to let the water cool. And venting doesn't reduce anger, it rehearses it and sometimes even reinforces it. So this looks at the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory. And this is a cartoon Gus will put up for the YouTube viewers. This looks at Schachter-Singer two-factor theory looks at basically, we're looking at an image here. I'll describe it for the folks at home. That a cartoon man sees a bear in the woods. He's out hiking and he sees a bear in the woods. And then basically that bear acts as a stimulus causing physical reaction or arousal. That when we see that bear, all of a sudden we go, we're scared. So we feel that fear inside. Number two, the second factor is that we label what's going on. So if we cognitively label the physical response and associate it with an emotion, so we're like, we're scared and we're in danger because there's a bear here, and then we may feel the emotion, we get terrified and we run away. That's the third part. So we get physiologically aroused, we label it, and then we feel the emotion. And this is really the theory behind how we experience emotion. So we always want to have a mental meaning. This is one reason we can watch a scary movie and not go running out of the theater, because we can be in a scary movie, we can get the physiological arousal, but we always know we're safe. So we're okay. I mean, we may be behind a pillow or hiding in our seats, but we always know ultimately we're okay. Does that compute?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Once I was watching a scary movie in Santa Barbara, and it was this demon possession movie with Toni Collette. I can't remember what the name of the movie was, but she was like in this long line of demons and it took her over in the house and this and that. Anyway, I go into this movie in Santa Barbara and I'm the only person in the theater. And you know what is scarier than watching a movie? A scary movie is watching it all alone in a movie theater.
And it's real dark in there, so
it's real
alone. I'd be like, no, I'm getting murdered here.
So I will cop to that. I did a coping behavior. What I did is I sat in the very back row in the middle. So I could get a full scan of the whole theater.
I would have sat at the top, so my back would have been against the wall.
Yeah, that's where I was.
Oh, okay.
That's exactly where I was.
Okay.
Yeah. And I watched it from there, and I watched the whole thing. It was ultimately not my favorite movie, but it was scary to watch it like that. So this goes back to when we want to reduce anger, we want to reduce physiological arousal and or change the meaning. So you could do it you could have physiological arousal in a scary movie, but you have a different meaning attached. Or you could reduce arousal or do both. Sometimes you don't want to change it. Like if you see a bear, it's telling you that there's danger. That's a good reason we have these kinds of reactions. So what works? Well, in cognitive behavior therapy, we talk about having a realistic appraisal. We kind of talked about that a little bit. It's easy. It's not easy to do in the moment, because usually if you're feeling something like fear or anger, your mind doesn't go to, let me look at this more realistically. We might be jumping straight to the emotion. If we're going to evaluate a thought, we might just do a best, worst, and most likely analysis. Like, well, what's the best thing that could happen? What's the worst thing that could happen? And what's most likely? So if we see a bear, maybe the best would be like the bear wants to pose for a picture with us. The worst would be it's about to attack, and most likely it's going about its way. Just stay out of its way and back off. That would probably be the most likely. So let's talk about lowering arousal. So for lowering arousal, the authors did suggest some very concrete things like deep breathing, relaxation, mindfulness, meditation, slow flow yoga, diaphragmatic breathing, and progressive muscle relaxation. Progressive muscle relaxation, this is kind of a cool thing. I've even told adult clients the instruction you give to children, because it actually is much easier to do, especially when you're having a very severe moment of anger or arousal, is to go tight like a rubber band and limp like a noodle. Tight like a rubber band and limp like a noodle.
So do that
Ta-da!
motion when you're mad?
Well, that could help. All of these can help. And taking a time out. Actually, I think taking a time out is one of the very best things you can do.
Yeah.
And if you can distract yourself by doing something like reading or doing something else, the problem with jogging, why it's most likely to increase anger, may be that you're just focusing on the anger. So you're going out jogging and really thinking about it and rehearsing it. I have clients who will take a time out, they'll go for a walk, and I'm thinking, oh, that's so great they did that. And then they'll tell me the whole time I was thinking about how terrible that person was. And I'm like, oh, bring headphones, play really cool music that you love, because that would be a way to help with it, to connect to something different, to get your mind in a different place. That will help you with the physiological arousal.
It's cool. A friend once said, I think he was joking, but I think it's always stuck with me, that if you're ever feeling like too much in your head, overwhelmed or anxiety or anything, to just turn the music all the way up, and the music drowns it. And it does. It works.
There you go.
It does,
There you go. And hearing damage. So the thing, though, is not all physical stuff is bad. Actually, physical education classes, so things, like I like to go to boot camp and things where you're having to pay attention and follow someone else's instruction, is actually very helpful. And also playing ball sports. Why ball sports? Because you can't control the ball. You're having to react to it and play in a team. So if you're playing tennis or soccer or some other kind of ball sport, you're having to focus on something other than yourself, and that will have an arousal decreasing effect. And it may also cause more positive emotions, because the positive emotions of play may help you with the negative feelings.
So I run when I'm angry sometimes. I'm like, oh man. But I run to the point where I'm like exhausted. So in my head, I'm like tiring myself out physically.
Do you listen to music?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
but it's music that's making me, I use the anger as like a drive to run faster.
Well, I mean, if it does help you, then it helps you. I think you have to engage.
Should I have not been doing this?
Well, but I think a lot of people, when they do things like that, they actually make themselves angrier. Like I talk to clients all the time I might give them an instruction like, let's say go, when you're very angry, don't stick around with your partner, go for a walk. And then they get very angry. So, and then they're like, no, I just got angrier. So implications, we tend to lose it with our children and our spouses. Take a time out, do some deep breathing. Thich Nhat Hanh had an anger meditation, just I am angry, I am angry, I am angry. And, I'm a big fan of the cold washcloth on the back of the neck, or ice cubes, or holding ice cubes, or splashing cold water on your face. All of those can be quite helpful, believe it or not. Even jumping into a pool.
Yeah, jumping into a pool.
Yeah,
for
that
sure.
can be amazing. And now Psychology in the News. March 20th was the International Day of Happiness. The theme was happiness together, and lasting happiness comes from feeling connected to other people and being part of something bigger. And for the first time on that March 20th International Day of Happiness, the United States fell out of the top 20 spots of the world's happiest nations. We are now number 23. So rankings: Finland, number 1, Denmark, Iceland, Sweden, with 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5th was Israel, believe it or not. So it was Scandinavia represented in the first 4 ratings, and then Israel. United States, number 23. We were number 15 last year, so we are sliding. And for the first time, this was the first time we lost in the top 20 since 2012 when this first was started to be recognized. So it may be for many reasons, but Vivek Murthy, he's the U.S. Surgeon General, cited rising levels of anxiety and other mental health issues among the young. And going back as far back as 2021, of course, the pandemic. And this was interesting to me because there are some themes that come out, and I'll just go through these quickly. But 140 nations were polled in the Gallup World Poll and analyzed by well-being scientists. Brian and I went to a lecture on Saturday, and we heard about well-being scientists. So that was pretty cool. There were several in the room giving a lecture. The top 10 countries, the next 5 were the Netherlands, Holland, which is Holland, you guys may know, Norway, Luxembourg, Switzerland, and Australia. Canada, by the way, was number 15. England was 20th, and Afghanistan was 143rd, dead last. So it may have to do with the generation divide. Those born before 1965 are happier than those born after 1980. What was interesting about this cited statistic is it completely left out Generation X, people born between 1965 and 1980. And Generation X truly is the forgotten generation, so much so they were left out of this study too. So among millennials, evaluation of one's own life drops each year with age. So as you get older, Brian, you get less happy, apparently. And among boomers, life satisfaction increases with age. This is kind of, this didn't surprise me because we've known this forever. When you're younger, you tend to be a little more cranky. And then when you get older, you tend to be a little more satisfied with your life. But we tend to see more of a that people tend to be kind of happy when they're very young, and then they kind of, when middle age, all the weight of the world sets in, and then once you get a little older, you get a little better. Happiness among the young, ages 15 to 24, has declined across North America, Western Europe, Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia since 2019. What do you guys think?
Very accurate.
What do you think? Why? Why those places?
Like just specific. I just figured like everywhere.
Oh, yeah, well, maybe. But yeah, I mean, we don't know about some places. I'm sure North Korea didn't participate. But but we, I wonder if there's a lot of technology influence here. Just a curiosity. But this also had to do with, the pandemic.
We did talk about the technology and how only certain places with their iPhones and had access to social media before.
Yeah. And what's interesting is in this study that younger people felt better in every other area. It was just in those areas I mentioned that they started to feel worse. By the way, if you're under 30, Lithuania is the place to be. That is the happiest place for people under 30. And for people over 60, Denmark is the place to be. How about that?
Look at that.
So one thing we looked at was the political divide. And according to a new Florida Atlantic University Qualcomm and Main Street Research Happiness Poll, sampled 1,053 adults 18 and older, March 15th to March 17th. This just happened. And they assessed that voters of the Democratic Party and U.S. President Joe Biden are happier as a group than voters for the Republican Party and former U.S. President Donald Trump. This seemed kind of interesting to me because in the past, Republicans have been the happier group according to other surveys that have happened. So this was just kind of an interesting thing. Now, you can make a case, and I think you can make this case, that people who are who agree with the incumbents, so this would be the person in office now, Joe Biden, would feel happier because they feel like the nation is going in the direction they'd like it to. And the people who are not happy tend to want to support the challenger. And that is not an unusual thing to be. But where we got interesting in this poll was to look at the youngest versus the oldest voters. This paralleled the world study. The youngest voters, only 42% said they were happy, where 89% of the oldest voters were happy. And the older, wealthier voters, people when they earn more than $100,000, 72% said they were happy. But when they earned less than $50,000, 62% said they were happy. So just to go over the percentages, I don't think I did, was Trump voters, overall 66% of the sample, that's 2/3 of the sample, said they were happy. I mean, this is kind of good when you're really looking at a happiness study that most people are happy, generally. I mean, at least slightly here. But Trump supporters, 62% said that they were happy, where 75% of Biden supporters said they were happy. I really looked at this and I had an issue with the political part of it. And I will tell you why. Because we might be looking at different artifacts happening. Yes, these people are Trump versus Biden, but it may have as much to do with the income, and it may have much to do with different other factors that are happening, like, again, the incumbent versus challenger dynamic. So we tend to look at these different things a little bit differently. When we look at factors that increase the odds of happiness, in previous studies, health was the big factor, church attendance, income, being over 64. So you can see where this is. Like when you're young, you definitely have health, but I don't know how many young people go to church on a regular basis or have a great income. I don't know any young people over 64 years old. It's just zero. But married, very few are married. So, these are things that impact happiness that young people don't have a lot of control over. So we're looking at some different things here. And I think it's a little bit short-sighted myself. I think it's interesting to look at Democrat versus Republican, but I wouldn't want to do that without looking at the history of studies to say that in the past Republicans have been happier. So, but they do look at happiness may play a role in voting behavior, and voting behavior may also play a role in how people view their happiness in the world. And it may make a small difference in an election. Kind of interesting, huh? The thing about happiness, the good news is most people are at least slightly satisfied with their lives. What do you think? Would you say slightly, generally, or extremely?
I'm pretty happy with I'm grateful. I'm very grateful and content and happy, but
So you're satisfied or extremely satisfied?
I would say extremely satisfied.
Ah, wow.
Because the life is good, I can't complain compared to what most people are living through and stuff.
Wow. Okay. How about you, Gus? Happy?
I think I would say I'm satisfied, but I wouldn't say I still want to be more satisfied, so I wouldn't say extreme.
Yeah, I agree I'm right on that same page because I do not, I always like to leave room for improvement. And, I'm pretty satisfied, but, challenges of life, they sometimes get in the way.
Yeah, I just try to cherish it all. Even if it's a sucky moment, I'm still really grateful and extremely happy with what I have in my life right now and the health and everything, and the fact that we're even able to do this show right now.
And, one thing we can learn from today's show, it's good to be flexible with yourself, kind to yourself, to connect with other people, and to realize we all have ups and downs, but we want to become better people overall. And maybe the first place to start is with ourselves and being a little kinder to ourselves. So that wraps up the show for today with the theme, be present, be flexible, and be kind. This is Dr. Greg Kason, Brian, and Gus saying farewell to you. Bye-bye until next time.